From the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this week's second edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show tonight, a day before inland schools around the country reopen for the 2023 academic year, our reporters speak to parents, teachers, pupils, and authorities about the state of readiness, their fears, concerns, and complaints ahead of tomorrow's big day. We also zoom in on one woman's 7-year struggle to find suitable schools for her children and others who find themselves in a similar situation.
Our thinking about organizational renewal has got to move beyond this religious propaganda of saying let's return to the values. We sound like people who say let's go to church and pray.
The exit of many ANC veterans from the party's National Executive Committee has paved the way for new and younger cadres. We introduce you to one of them. Zuko Godlimpi shares with us his ideas, hopes, and aspirations for his party and the country. The Watchdog starts now. Brenda Matebe has lived through 7 years of hell. In 2016, the single parent and her 2 children relocated from the Eastern Cape to the Northern Cape, where she took up a senior post at a government department. When she got there, she couldn't find an English medium school for both her children, now aged 11 and 15. She joins me on the line. And also forming part of this conversation is the MEC for Education in the province, Mr. Zolile Monakali. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Vuyo. Thank you for having us.
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me as well.
Thank you to both of you for agreeing to come on. Brenda, if I may start with you. You got there, you couldn't find an English medium school. What were you told?
Basically, I was told that all 74 public schools are Afrikaans medium. At the time, I had no choice but to enroll my kids on the only school that was English medium, which was a private school and was not affordable at all. So 2 years, my children attended the private school till I ran out of funds to educate my kids. So in 2018, I decided to reach out to the district director at the time, which was the late Mr. Klute, who said to me that he will try to assist us, because it was not just me that had 2 kids, it was about 200 kids that had the same problem in the area.
And what were you told were the reasons why there were no English medium schools?
The only reason that we are repeatedly being told is that Namakwa is an Afrikaans dominant area, which is a fact. We do understand that, but we also are here in Namakwa, whether we are 1% or 2%, we are here, our children needs to be catered for in terms of language barriers at the schools. But until today, there's no change.
Zolile, what is the situation here?
Thank you, Vuyo. Let me first take the opportunity to thank you for creating the platform for us to make sure we are giving clarity around this matter of the English medium schools in the Namakwa district. And this discussion must be put into perspective. I'm glad that Ms. Matebe agrees that in the Northern Cape, we've got 5 districts, and Namakwa land is a district that is predominantly, I can nearly say 99% of the people there are speaking Afrikaans. That is a fact that we must consider. In 2019, when the term of the 6th administration started, we got a request from concerned parents in Namakwa to say that they are interested for their children to be taught in English as a medium of instruction. What we have done as the department since 2019, we have conducted some surveys in the area, because we must remember that for us to introduce a language as a medium of instruction, there is a legislative framework. There are national norms and standards which conducts the introduction of a medium of instruction. To make sure that we comply with that legislation, we conducted a survey in Namakwa. Up to now, we have conducted 3 surveys. We conducted a survey in 2019, and the results of that survey indicated that there were 55 parents or children who have been interested to be taught in English. We again conducted a survey in 2001. Those results indicated that we've got 299 learners or children who are interested to be taught in English, and then that is 2021. We got 299 interested people to be taught in English, and our latest survey, 2022, we got a number of 600 interested parties to be taught in English. So what we are doing currently, we have also established a task team that is working around this thing, or a steering committee, of which Member Tebe was part of the steering committee, including the district office, including SGBs, to say, let us work around these issues to ensure that we are getting at an acceptable agreement, to say, how are we going to deal with the issue? Issues that we are considering is, the first one is the legislation. The norms and standards for language policy in public schools indicates very clearly that it is reasonably practicable to provide education in a particular language of learning and teaching if at least 40 learners in grades 1 to grade 6 or 35 learners in grade 7 to grade 12 are interested to be taught in that language. That is what the norms of standards is saying on the language policy in public schools. So with the information that we are gathering, we are trying to determine whether we are meeting the requirements of the legislative framework.
Did you just say 40?
I am saying for grade 1 to 6 is 40 per class, and for grade 7 to 12 is 35 per class.
Are you saying you don't have those numbers currently?
Currently, we don't have those numbers. We must look into the geographic outlay of the district. Namakwa is the biggest district that we are having in the country, not even in the province. It's a sparsely populated, vast area. These 600 learners that we have established that they are interested to be taught in English are spread all over the district. Others are in Springbok. From Springbok, we've got areas that are 300 kilometers, others are 200 kilometers. So they are spread all over, and they are in different grades. Okay. Some of them are in lower grades and others are in higher grades.
Okay,
so
now
that is the challenge that we are facing.
Okay, let me take you back a step or two. I mean, you said that, you undertook this survey in 2019. From what you know or what you were told after, of course, you assumed this particular role or took this position of MEC of Education, do you know what happened or why it took so long for work to even begin on this?
All what I can say to you is that we received the complaint of the concerned parents in 2019. So when I arrived in the department, the process was already ongoing to deal with the matter, because the department agreed to say that we recognize the fact that it's the right of parents and learners to be taught in the medium of instruction of their choice. But our responsibility is then to make sure whether the legislative environment, the practicability as contained in the norms of standards, are we meeting those areas. Okay. And also to make sure whether we implement this thing, will it be sustainable in the long future. Okay.
Now, on the back of what happened in 2019, the survey and steering committee gets put together. What has that steering committee done until up to now?
What the steering committee's mandate was to interact with all the parents in Namakwa, to collect data from them so that we can have an indication how many parents want their learners to be taught in English as a medium of instruction. In this steering committee, we have involved the Human Rights Commission, we have involved the National Department of Basic Education, and also the local stakeholders, so that we can make sure the data that we are going to collect from the community, based on what is coming out there, then we can all agree what is the way forward to make it possible for these children to be taught in English. So this steering committee then, based on the information, has to explore the various models that can be implemented in relation with the legislative framework. Because it's all of us, the department, the aggrieved parents, all stakeholders, we agree that we want to give the children the best education, but we don't want to compromise quality. We've got the unions involved, everyone is working together so that we can see what is practicable, possible to make sure we give the learners education or their teaching to take place in the medium of instruction of English.
Now, Ms. Matebe, I mean, as a member of that steering committee as well, I mean, your information doesn't contradict what Mr. Monagale says, or does it?
I have a different point of view to that. I will start with the statistics of 55 service that they got. We also informed the MEC years ago that the department manipulates the outcome of the data that they collected. On that 55, as we counted amongst ourselves, we got more than 200 applications that were sent to the department, but we don't know where the other applications are. Last year, we had a survey again. I was also part of that. As parents, we collected on our own, with our own resources, without the help of the department, 407 completed copies. The department only captured 340, and now it is back to the question of manipulating of the statistics. Where are the rest of the hard copies that we collected? And in terms of the task team,
yes, continue. You can finish your point.
We have been part of the task team, me and the parents, but the department's officials will always have some reasons not to come to meetings and push meetings back. That is where it turned out that we had to be aggressive, and they opened a case against me at work. And we are no longer part of this task team because the department is always busy. They don't have time. When we always give our time for this, they don't want to work together with us. And we always tell them that we don't trust them, and they seem to be offended by that.
Two main accusations here, Mr. Monagale. One is that these numbers are manipulated, brought down deliberately, so that they can only be one outcome. Can you vouch for the integrity of the process as it is being led or steered or managed by the department?
Thank you, Vuyo. No, Vuyo, what I can say at this point in time is that I was part of several meetings of the steering committee. And in those meetings, in the presence of Ms. Matebe, statistics were presented in those meetings. The issue of the manipulation of the data, I won't be able to comment on that. All what I can say to Ms. Matebe, if she feels that she's got proof that the data has been manipulated, then she must provide me with that proof. As far as I know, we have agreed that the steering committee will deal with the process, and on a quarterly basis, I'm traveling from Kimberley to Springbok. It's nearly 1,000 cases to meet with the steering committee and to get updates how far they are with this project of the English medium. So the fact that she is now saying that the data has been manipulated and she's questioning the data and she is also not trusting the officials of the department, I think if that is the situation, then she must come up with the evidence so that I can deal with that matter. But as far as I know, the steering committee has been meeting and the data has been shared in meetings where they had been present and parents have been present, and I did not receive any objection to the data that was presented in those meetings.
Okay, just to make sure I understand you correctly and for the sake of our viewers, you're saying, Mr. Monakali, that one, the issue of the information being manipulated or the numbers being manipulated has never been raised with you, either by Ms. Matebe or any of the parents or interested parties for that matter. And you're saying that secondly, it is not true that departmental officials often don't attend these meetings. You're denying both.
No, definitely. What reason will departmental officials have to manipulate data? We have decided that we want to resolve the issue. We want to give the children of Namakwa the best education that we can give, as we are giving to all the other children in the Northern Cape. So the department does not have a reason not to cooperate to make sure we introduce English as a medium of instruction. So there's no reason for me to question the loyalty or the honesty of the officials of the department. But I am saying, if Ms. Matebe is convinced that data has been manipulated or things have been going wrong, then she's got the prerogative to inform me. Now coming Thursday, the 13th, there is a meeting of the same steering committee that is scheduled for the 13th now to deal with the outcomes of the survey of last year, 2022. We've got the Human Rights Commission as part of this steering committee, basically to make sure we recognize the rights of the children and of the parents who wants to be taught in English. So if she feels that she cannot share that information with me, the Human Rights Commission is part of the steering committee. She can also divulge that information to the Human Rights Commission.
Quick one, what has the Human Rights Commission said so far?
No, the Human Rights Commission is cooperating, is part of the steering committee to try to assist us not to disadvantage the learners or the parents who want to be taught, their children to be taught in English. So we said, no, we are open because we are sharing the same sentiment. We want to advantage those learners. But unfortunately, there are legislative impediments that we must comply to as a department. We cannot just really decide today, let us open an English medium school, because with the opening of those English medium classes are a lot of other things that must also be considered.
Ms. Matebe, it's not for lack of trying. The situation is a lot more tricky and difficult than it is being made to be by some people who, yes, driven by all the right reasons, and including, of course, constitutional rights here. But the law as it stands doesn't really make this thing possible at this stage. You accept that?
The same policy that MEC was referring to, I believe it is the last part. It says, if there is not sufficient numbers of children that needs that specific language, the HOD is supposed to make sure that these kids have been catered to in a language that they understand. That has not been done since we've started. And Vuyo, parents before me started this process from 2006. They have not gone anywhere until today. And I've also lodged a complaint with the Human Rights Commission because on the 11th of October last year, we had a meeting with HOD, Mrs. Mares. It was quite insulting. She was insulting us to say that before we accept posts in this area, we should have made the research and decided on the research to take the post or to decline the post, which means that she would rather us to contribute in the unemployment rate in our country as to take post here and provide to our families. The next thing that she said that if we did not find any public schools in Namakwa that could cater to our kids, we should just go and enroll to private schools. Now, I don't know where we will get the money for that.
Now, Mr. Monagale, I mean, what Ms. Matebe is saying in a nutshell is that yes, she accepts all the other, or may accept all the other reasons that you have put forward, but you simply haven't tried hard enough because you still have avenues that you never explored.
We have explored various modalities. The first thing Memotebe will remember to be said, you must remember the teachers who are teaching in Namakwa are Afrikaans teachers. They have not been trained to present their lessons in English. That's the first challenge that we are sitting with. What we have agreed as part of the interventions is that at the schools where these children are, at these Afrikaans schools, firstly, the communication with the parents must be in English. We have agreed that in the steering committee. Secondly, we said that the school must make sure they provide those learners who are taught currently in Afrikaans but want to be taught in English, to provide them with the textbooks in English, so that the parents who are in the position to assess the children at home can also try to assess them. We also even explored the issue of trying to accommodate learners in the hostel, so that we can look how can we make it possible to accommodate these learners in English. Mema Tebe was one of the parents who indicated that she will be in a position to assist their children if she can receive the textbooks. I know, of course, later on, there was a complaint that the textbooks have not been delivered, but we worked on that at the department, and we are committing that as we are starting this academic year, all the learners want to be taught in English, at least to have an English textbook, and communication to their parents must be done in English, until we get a sustainable solution that we can sustain for a long period of time. But as the department, we are committed to make sure we accommodate all learners in our schools in the Northern Cape.
I think there's a whole host of issues that this throws up, which unfortunately we can't exhaust tonight. Hopefully we can get you back together with other stakeholders on this, because there are such issues. I hope if I get both of you correctly from the little we've been able to do tonight, there are such issues as political willingness that come into the fore as well. There's a very real issue of the constitutional rights of these children, perhaps not so much their parents, but the children themselves, and what the situation they are forced to confront now actually means for them as they grow and they hope to be educated in the best way possible. But for tonight, let me thank both of you for coming through, and let's hope that in the not too distant future we'll be able to get back to this issue and discuss it in depth. Special thanks to both of you. Let's bring you to now a quick roundup of some of the places our journalists visited today ahead of tomorrow's reopening of inland schools. In Gauteng, the Provincial Education MEC, Madume Chilwane, has assured parents that all children that have not yet secured places at schools will be placed. Over 1,300 Gauteng grade 1 and 8 learners who applied online are yet to be placed. Angry parents have flocked to education district offices and schools, hoping to get last-minute confirmation of placements.
So those parents must understand that we will place your child, because we don't want any child to be out of school, but we will not place your child at your school of choice. So you will not be choosing. We'll be telling you.
With all the chaos and confusion around school placements, tensions are running high.
We are frustrated. My daughter cries every night because she doesn't know where she's going to. This online system is hell. It's not working at all.
Gauteng Education, however, has assured parents that their children will be placed.
Currently, the late application that we opened up on the 20th of December, which will be closing on the 31st, was sitting at 8,375. And what parents need to understand about this late application process is that you have forfeited certain rights, amongst those is to choose a school. To choose a school of your choice. When you come, you place your child where there's a space. That's how we're going to be dealing with them.
Frustrated parents say they're disappointed at the department's failure to find a permanent solution to what they say has become a crisis every year this time.
That's nonsense. First of all, they should have told us what criteria they used to allocate those children. As I told you, I've got a child who's already doing grade 11 there. I applied on the first day, submitted documentation on the same day. Why am I not in there? Why is my child not in school?
Teacher Union SATU has called for a speedy resolution. It's warned that unresolved admission problems will lead to overcrowding in schools.
We are concerned about the delays that have been caused by the online registration. The delays in the placement of learners not only cause problems for the management of the school, but they also disrupt the first day of learning, because those who have been registered and placed in classrooms, they will not be able to receive proper education until such time that all learners have been placed in their classes. But it also causes problems for the parents.
Many parents did not submit the required documentation, resulting in incomplete applications.
When we opened the system, the online system at the beginning last year, we picked up that we had just over 200, close to 300,000 applications. Of that number, and of the 300,000 applications, we expect a parent, when they apply, to submit documents. Document one, a birth certificate of a learner. If it were a grade 1 learner, an immunization card. We have picked up that there are parents that would apply on the system, and when they apply, they then don't submit documents. When you have just placed your name on the system and you have not submitted all the required documents, it makes your application incomplete. Those that are classified as incomplete applications are those that have not submitted full documents, and as a result, we do not know whether they still want space.
Gauteng Education says it's working tirelessly to resolve the matter by procuring additional mobile classes and loaning spaces. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.
At Malamulele in Limpopo, some parents feel that their children's right to free basic education is being tampered with. The Malamulele Secondary School has been demanding a once-off payment of 550 rands before issuing stationery to learners. The school is a no-fee school, though, where stationery and meals are supposed to be provided for by the government for free. Senior video journalist Hulisani Libembe and reporter Pimani Baloi filed this report.
Locals in the Malamulele area say it has become common practice for non-fee schools in the area to demand a once-off payment before issuing out stationery. The schools argue that the money is used to cover services such as cleaning and security that are not catered for in the norms and standards that they receive from government. But some parents say this decision essentially kicks their children out of the education system.
The parents who does not have money, it means their children are not supposed to go to school now. If the education, they say education is free, but here we are, our children does not have the books today, but the department says it's free education now. It means tomorrow there will be no school because we are not going to allow the richest people to attend the school while our children will be staying at home.
They said they want 500 and some says 550. So then after you paid 550, you can able to get a registration. So we try to ask them, what's the reason for us to pay 500? Why? They said now we want to pay for security and the person those are looking for the school being cleaned. So up to so far now, we don't know. How can we do? Because up to so far, everyone is going back home, more special parents and children.
Members of the school governing body were not present at the school premises. Parents gathered at the school and sent representatives to the school management to inform them that most of them cannot afford to make the required payments.
There was never a meeting to inform parents last year about this 550. We don't even know how they arrive at 550. In this ward, we have 3 high schools. We have EPP Minga that has more enrollment than this one. And EPP Minga has had a meeting last year where they've asked the parents to contribute 150. Now, it's injustice to ask for these people who are using grant 550. Now, what we are saying as the ANC in this ward, it's school tomorrow should not open. We gave them a condition. They should open, they should give these people books. School should take place tomorrow.
The Limpopo Education Department has distanced itself from the school's stance, stating that demanding money for stationery is a violation of the National Schools Act. Spokesperson Mike Maringa says officials will on Wednesday visit the school to ensure that stationery is issued to all learners. Beman Baloi, SABC News, Malamulele in Limpopo.
New Year, same set of problems. Gauteng, people can register, or in other schools around the country, no-fee schools are forcing parents to pay, and all the department can say is we're distancing ourselves from this. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, someone's going to step in and really deal with these issues. After the break, we meet one of the ANC's new dynamic young leaders. Don't go away. He got 1,172 votes from the over 4,436 ANC conference delegates who cast their votes for the 80 NEC positions that were up for grabs, which made him number 54 on the list. Zuko Godlimpi joins me on the line. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Budvuya, for inviting me. Greetings to the audience at home.
Now, in unfamiliar settings, where you have to briefly introduce yourself to strangers, who do you say Zuko Godlimpi is?
I incidentally usually say Zuko Godlimpi is a nobody. I'm a village boy born in the Eastern Cape in a small town called Bizana, in the northeastern side of the Eastern Cape as you are approaching the KZN border. I'm a South African youth activist. I've spent quite a number of years in the youth movement, in the student movement. That's just about it. I'm a typical village person who is driven by notions of social justice because of the circumstances into which I was born, the environment around which I was brought up. And that's pretty much what explains my participation in politics and generally my outlook, even as I participate in politics. That's as much as I go.
And what do you do currently?
I'm currently employed as Chief of Staff in the office of the MEC for Cocta in the Eastern Cape, Honorable Zorile Williams. So I'm a public servant.
Okay. Now, when did you join the ANC and why?
I officially joined the ANC when I was eligible to do so in 2010, but I was an activist member of the ANC via the Youth League channel for 4 years before I joined the ANC officially. So I joined the Youth League when I was 14, around 2006. In fact, I had tried to join the ANC earlier when I was 12, around 2004, but I was not allowed because even the Youth League only takes people at the age of 14 officially. Mm-hmm. I joined the ANC because I was attracted mainly to what I understood to be its organizing principles and ideals, which at the time were, of course, personified by its most senior leadership. So that sort of aspirational, leadership at the time attracted me to the idea of participating in a broad social movement for change and doing my little bit to improve the living conditions of the people around my area where I was born, in Bizana. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, from there, via participation, my understanding of what the ANC is, what the struggle for social justice is, got broadened, and then that intensified my participation, especially once I joined the student movement when I was in university. Mm-hmm. from there, it's just become who I am. It's being a member of the ANC, being an activist, driven by the sort of values that the ANC has been cultivating over the last century and some years, has just become a part of who I am.
Do you think many of your peers or people your age are motivated by the same reasons?
In fact, pretty much yes. I've interacted with quite a great number of young folks over the years who are my age, who are younger than me, who are a little bit older than me. All of us have joined the ANC and politics from different entry points, of course, but there is a shared understanding that what drew us into the fold was these aspirational values for social justice. Whether we've all stuck to those values is a different dimension of the discussion, and whether we are still all driven by those is a different dimension of the discussion. But just at the point of joining, most of us, especially the young ones, when we join the youth movement, when we join the student movement, we are mostly driven by notions of social justice and trying to do our little bit in, improving the conditions of the people who are in our immediate setting. So I'm still pretty much convinced that there is a great army of young people in the ANC and in South Africa at large who still uphold those values, who believe in those values, and who take decisions based on those, regardless of the myriad of challenges that we're experiencing in South African politics right now.
2022, it's the run-up to the ANC elective conference, which took place at Nasrec a few weeks ago. And throughout that period, whenever, we ask people, why are you raising your hand? Why are you making yourself available? Why would you want to be in the NSC or the PEC? Here you get answers like, it's what the branches want. I've been approached. People have asked me to make myself available. So it's what these structures, want. As a disciplined member, of the movement, I can't say no. Of course, often the opposite is actually true, isn't it?
Well, let me give you a bit
the truth is, many of these people would have actually asked people to nominate them, would have said, I'm available, and I'm not going to go to that Tabambeki term of Diketeni, but that is the reality, isn't it? Many people come forward, they say, I'm available, comrades, make use of me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
There are two things that are in tension, Budvuyo, and which explains what you've now just narrated. The ANC has its own institutional culture of voluntarism on the one hand, which means all of us must be readily available to do something, a call of duty sort of thing. But the ANC also has, an inbuilt ethic of refusing to say, choose me, elect me, It's a historically evolved idea that let the people be the ones who decide who should lead them. It can't be you. And on the one hand, there is, demands of modernization and modernity, arguments that the ANC is no longer a party underground, it's not banned, it's not a party that is struggling against an oppressive regime of apartheid and so on, and that therefore a much more liberal outlook ought to be cultivated and accepted. And I think those are the two things that are in tension. And all of us who grew up in the ANC, who got groomed into the organizational ethic of voluntarism, but not saying, please elect me, we are struggling with the demand that we should one day wake up and say, I think I'm fit to be elected, therefore elect me. That is why you are getting these responses that you seem to believe are either not genuine or it's just like, in-house rhetoric that all of us are hiding behind. But I can give you my context, which pretty much is similar to what you are saying. What had happened is that my peers, firstly in the Youth League, said to me, we've taken the decision that we are going to nominate you for election. And in fact, my first reaction was to reprimand them. I said, no, don't do that. You are out of order. What you're doing is wrong. Don't do it, and so on. And that's partly because it's a level of leadership that despite having been around and having done everything I've done in the movement, I didn't quite at the time think it was a moment that had arrived for me to accept nomination into. But of course, my peers and other leaders and members of the ANC insisted that no, they think that we as the young ones have some strategic value to add and we must be introduced into the pipeline of leadership right now, and we therefore must accept nomination into.
Even when some people believe that the bar is low, in fact, others would go further to say completely. You know, I mean, do you still hold that view?
Pretty much because ucingo luwile is why those of us who at least observed the ANC at the height of its values and leadership would be reluctant to accept that invitation. Because, you know, for me, if the bar is low, it doesn't mean nes mitium as well, you know. This first thing that comes to mind is what do we do in order to raise the bar? And this is what then was brought into the equation. People said, well, if you don't accept nomination, if you don't accept election, who's going to be elected and take up this task of raising the bar? And that was at the point at which we all accepted that, well, there's a compelling argument being made here that we've got to accept introduction into the pipeline and learn from senior leaders of the ANC whilst they are still alive and whilst they are still in active leadership, so that you could understand some of the institutional values of the movement from them, but also introduce a dynamic edge of a militant, impatient, innovative, and intellectually radical leadership. And that's what we've accepted to be our calling at the moment.
Hence, I suppose, I mean, one of the big issues you're rallying around is one of renewal. Let me take you back to something you said in a video that circulated a lot on social media around renewal.
When we speak about organizational renewal, we need to consider the possibility of imposing an inventory on each branch of the ANC that says, for you to be in good standing, you have to give us a consistent account of the state of infrastructure in your ward. You have to give us an account of the number of enrollments in the local schools. You have to give us a consistent account of the number of kids who come from indigent households in your wards. And in turn, you have to elaborate a program of action that responds to these things. And if you can't give us this, then you can't be a branch in good standing, even if you have 1,000 paid-up members. And for a leader of the ANC to emerge and be considered a cadre worthy of being elected, has got to have a proven record of participating in these programs that we're outlining, so that we are not subjected to a group of scammers who were able to make money in whatever way that they did, and who buy their way to the top of our organization. So our thinking about organizational renewal has got to move beyond this religious propaganda of saying, let's return to the values. We sound like people who say, let's go to church and pray and hope that all of us will come back having accepted Jesus as our Savior. But the problems of renewal are not just subjective weaknesses of our members. Yes, those are important, but they must also be located in the context of structural redesigns that increase the premium placed on structures for them to be in good standing.
Now, very little of that actually happens in your branches and the structures broadly, which then makes the life of, which is going to make the life of this new, ANC, NEC, with all the zest and enthusiasm that some of you may have, very difficult.
Two things, Budvuyo. Firstly, the weaknesses that we were discussing in that Youth League Political School are a function of this innate belief in the ANC's organizational design that all of us are volunteers of the movement, we subscribe to the same set of values, and therefore would voluntarily do best. And this is what has been proven over time to be a bit of a strategic weakness, because what happens if people choose not to be as voluntary as the movement imagines them to be? That's the first part. The second one is, this National Executive Committee is elected at the back of a conference mandate that includes an acceptance of the reforms that were proposed in that political school that you just played in. So I do believe that we're sitting on a good platform, because finally, the ANC has accepted the logic of the Youth League on that question of organizational redesign as part of organizational renewal. What is left for us to do, which will be led by the officials and especially the Office of the Secretary General is to design then an implementation action framework for those organizational redesign propositions that we're making. So I do believe that our enthusiasm will be sustained, and of course it is upon us to sustain it by building into organizational action these perspectives that we outlined, which the ANC has of course accepted. And they were accepted firstly at the 6th National Policy Conference in July, and by the time we got to NASREC 2, now in December, and the continuation now in January, it had been broadly accepted by the rank and file of the ANC and the leadership that this is the form of organizational design that we've got to undertake. Well, I mean, it's going to be a tall order because, I mean, based on your own, analysis and assessment, your deployment processes are problematic, and the little that has been done in the last while to purportedly try and address those has actually come to a naught. In fact, you've been one of those voices that have been critical of those processes. Take a listen again to what you had to say in that same on that same occasion around deployment.
The deployment of comrades into state positions is based on nothing. I mean, we had this thing that people must come and show their academic qualifications, and then they will. I have a very troubled position on this thing, and the subcommittee, we've tried to think about it. What is the guarantee that a person with a BSc in mathematics has the capacity to be mayor? What is the relationship between these two things? You are able to do differential calculus and so on. How does that guarantee you that you will have the capacity to deal with matters of development? So the ANC has the tendency of taking mechanical solutions to complex political problems. It doesn't mean that when you have a PhD in development theory, you have the capacity to lead an institution on matters of development. So what it essentially means is that if I have an MBA and I'm a businessman, I have money, all I have to do is to get myself nominated in the ANC structures, be a candidate for mayor, produce my MBA, and therefore be proclaimed the best candidate for mayor. What are the tasks of the National Democratic Revolution with respect to building developmental local government? I don't know. I don't need to know it. All I have is an MBA and money to get myself there. Now, the ANC needs to move beyond the qualifications criteria. It's an important one, but it's got to be enriched.
What are the chances of that happening sooner rather than later? You have a cabinet reshuffle looming. You have a crisis, the electricity crisis we're seeing all over the place. It's just been announced we're going to stage 6 at 9 p.m. this evening. The never-ending problem and a whole host of other problems that need your organization's attention.
With Vuyo, there are immediate problems that need our collective attention. The apex of those is load shedding. It's the most annoying thing that is happening in South Africa right now. It's the greatest attack on the possibility of South Africa's success, both economically and politically. It frustrates all of us, and we need to find a way around that. And the January 8th statement did elaborate a framework of how we intend on tackling that as the African National Congress under this new National Executive Committee. But on the question of what happens going forward, including cabinet reshuffles and so on, the National Executive Committee has a conference mandate to elaborate a framework or a criteria for selection of leaders for deployment. Even if that may not be ready within the next 3 months, but it will eventually be done. And that's one of the things that we, the younger ones who are in the National Executive Committee, have committed ourselves to doing. We want to keep on insisting on the leadership of the ANC not to forget the key tasks before us, including the urgent need to do something very quickly and strategically effective in turning around South Africa's economic fortunes. And
but there have been conference mandates. Before this is not a first, but they have never been acted on in many aspects.
And there's been no conference mandates that included the election of a huge cohort of ANC Youth League members and recent graduates of the Youth League. So we're confident in the team that is elected in this National Executive Committee that the younger cohort of that leadership, us, including those who are our former leaders in the Youth League, who will do our level best to keep that National Executive Committee on its toes, to keep government on its toes, to force people to deliver or ship out. And I think if you listen to the Secretary General, who's our former president, when he delivered the Peter Mukaba lecture last Friday, he gave us confidence and the belief that there is that commitment at the highest level. We all agree. If people don't want to act right, do best by South Africans, they've got to ship out. And we'll be the first ones to call for their heads to be put on the chopping board.
But is it about quality? I mean, is it about age or quality, or the quality of the leadership that you have, irrespective of how young or old they may be?
No, it's about quality. Primarily, it's about quality. The discussion about the relationship between age and quality is about propensities. The argument is that the younger ones have a much higher propensity to act with speed and agility. But it doesn't mean that all those who are old are inherently incompetent or not.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking this is because you've had very experienced, very committed people, highly intelligent, but who have served in that National Executive Committee for many, many years, but without being listened to, especially lately. Like Joel Nachitenza, for example.
Okay, let me take a generic reaction to that. One of the things that must always happen with the National Executive Committee is the election of a group of leaders who have a shared perspective on what progress and development must look like. So being a lone voice means that you might be drowned out. But with this National Executive Committee, we've looked around. These are folks that we've elaborated many great perspectives about. And the leading issue for us is people who share a common perspective with us. And this is mostly a generation of leaders who were part of the ANC Youth League 2011 project that called for economic freedom in our lifetime and elaborated specific policy anchor points that would make that a reality. So we believe that because of the increased numbers of representation of that 2011 cohort, we stand a good chance now than any other NEC before. If you look at who we are in that NEC, there's not less than 18 of us who were at the 2011 Kalaka Conference of the Youth League and who still to this day profess commitment to that set of radical policy perspectives that were adopted at that conference.
Zuko Godlimpi, thanks very much to you and your cohort. Best of luck. Thank you very much for coming on the program this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Putvuya.
Zuko Godlimpi, one of the 87, if you include the officials, leadership core of the ANC, the people who are going to run the ANC over the next 5 years. That's our show for tonight. To join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.